But what we do know is that China is most likely to invest the most amount of resources on behalf and support of Joe Biden. And this is what is really concerning is I think all Americans should take all information that they receive, especially on social media, and compare it to the actual facts on the ground and their experience as Americans.
I am not banning fracking.
Would there be any place for fossil fuels, including coal and fracking, in a Biden administration?
No, we would work it out. We would make sure it's eliminated and no more subsidies for either one of those, any fossil fuel. Let me say that again. I am not banning fracking, no matter how many times Donald Trump lies about me. No new fracking. And by the way, on the Recovery Act, I was able to make sure we invested $90 billion in making sure we brought down the price of solar and wind that is lower than the price of coal. That's why not another new coal plant will be built. I did that while you were watching. Number one. Number two.
We are going to get rid of fossil fuels.
Well, like what about, say, stopping fracking and stopping...
Yeah. I guarantee you, we're going to end fossil. I am not banning fracking.
So a lot of conversation about you and your latest moves. Let's talk about that. You gave a briefing to all of Congress on July 31st. The very next day, we all saw headlines about Russia meddling in our economy, which has been the case for several decades. Tell us why you're making this change to change the way you brief Congress on security matters.
Sure. Well, Maria, when I went through confirmation, people watched that. They heard me make a couple of promises. One of them was to always follow the law. The other was that I would do everything I could to protect the unauthorized disclosure of classified information, allowing people to leak it for political purposes. The action that I announced yesterday is entirely consistent with that. I reiterated to Congress, look, I'm going to keep you fully and currently informed as required by the law, but I also said we're not going to do a repeat of what happened a month ago, when I did more than what was required at the request of Congress to brief not just the oversight committees, but every member of Congress. When I did that, Maria, I said, my only condition is that you treat this information with the respect that it deserves and you keep it private. And yet within minutes of that, one of those briefings ending, a number of members of Congress went to a number of different publications and leaked classified information, again, for political purposes, to create a narrative that simply isn't true, that somehow Russia is a greater national security threat than China. So I'm going to continue to keep the promises that I made. I'm going to continue to follow the law. I'm going to continue to keep Congress informed. But we've had a pandemic of information being leaked out of the intelligence community, and I'm going to take the measures to make sure that that stops. We've had a pandemic of information being leaked out of the intelligence community, and I'm going to take the measures to make sure that that stops. There are investigations. I know that because I've made a number of what are called crimes reports in connection since I've been the DNI. When I become aware of intelligence community information that is disclosed unlawfully, I do what's called a crimes report. I've done that now on a number of occasions. And so those investigations are moving.
And unfortunately, the Speaker and Senator Schumer just don't want to negotiate in good faith. They've refused to meet. We reached an agreement on many, many issues, but they said unless we come out with a top line, they won't even give us details as to what they're interested. So, again, I think it's bad faith.
What I think is John Ratcliffe is telling us something very important, and that is that there are members of both the intelligence community and possibly members of Congress that are criminal leakers. And this is not only un-American, but it's really disgusting, these intelligence leaks that really don't allow the federal government to function the way it should. That's done instead of to improve legislation and improve our republic. It is used to damage individuals politically, especially the President of the United States. So I think I'm happy to hear that these referrals have been made for investigation, and I hope that we can hold some people accountable and prosecute some folks for leaking classified information.
And look at the quality of these public schools. I just saw a study about Philadelphia public school teachers, and something like 44% of them have their own school-age kids in private schools, as opposed to about 10% of the average Americans. Same thing with Chicago. A substantial number of these Chicago public school teachers with school-age kids put their own kids in private school. Now, what does that tell you? The people that know the best about these public schools are not putting their own kids in it, but they want to put your kids in it. It's outrageous. Well, if he didn't go, of course, he'd be called racially insensitive for not caring about the alleged issue of police brutality against black people. He goes and he's accused of being provocative. So the man simply can't win. You know, what I find fascinating about all of this stuff that we're talking about, Lou, is that sports is about numbers. It's about stats. It's about data. You cannot be an athlete, you cannot be a coach unless you have a good understanding about how to evaluate your opposing team and players by using stats and data. But when it comes to this issue about the allegation that the police are killing blacks just because they're black, killing unarmed black men just because they're unarmed black men, there is no data that supports that contention. In fact, if anything, the studies suggest the opposite, that the police are more hesitant, more reluctant to pull the trigger on a black suspect than a white suspect. Why don't the same athletes use the same mentality that they use to evaluate their own careers on this issue?